All right, Shellheads, I've been inspired. It is time to go through our picks for the top 10 Turtles villains of all time. And do not assume what the end of this list is going to be, because, y'all, this one's getting controversial. Everybody's fair game. Let's crack into it. All right, number 10, we have the Purple Dragons. This may be a street level team, but they are vitally important to the overall storytelling of the Turtles, being the first villains that the Turtles cut their teeth on learning how to be superheroes, to being the catalyst for the reason why we get our favorite vigilante, Casey Jones. They killed his dad. The amount of impact that these guys have had on the overall story of the Turtles is undeniable, and shows that not every single villain needs to be grand in scale to have an impact. Number 9, we have Toca and Razar. These guys may have been born out of some controversy. These guys may have been born as bumbling idiots, but between the 2012 cartoon, between the IDW comics, these two have been given a new lease on life. They have been given a backstory and a history and character development that's nuanced and rich, and has allowed for them to become menacing villains that actually have substance to them, landing them at number 9. Number 8, we have the henchman to the Shredder, the Foot, the homage to Marvel's The Hand. Just like the Turtles are an homage to Eastman and Layer's favorite superhero, Daredevil. These guys have been everything from the horde that the Turtles need to make their way through to get to the big bad, to deadly assassins that have created a lot of problems for New York City, especially in those early versions of the comics in the Mirage days. Y'all, these guys were deadly. So they belong on this list if for nothing else, the impact that they have on the overall world of the Turtles. Number 7, we have the Triceratons. These guys are incredibly important to the overall world of the Turtles, because they are a group that flushes out the larger mythos of the Turtles, especially in a world where so much rides on time travel and dimension hopping. These sworn enemies of Crang flush out Dimension X, and being foils to Crang really serve as a means to bolster a character that's going to land later on this list. Spoilers ahead. And so these guys have had different iterations across storytelling, but really serve as a catalyst for making Turtles a lived-in property that different generations can jump in on and have something to sink their teeth into. Number 6 is hard for me. It's not very often that you hear me disagree with the patron saint of the Shellheads, Kevin Eastman, but Bebop and Rocksteady belong on this list. If you didn't know, Kevin Eastman historically was not a fan of Bebop and Rocksteady, hence creating Toca and Razar. But I've got to disagree, because even for the 80s cartoon, they mattered. They were a part of the storytelling. Yeah, they were a little bumbling, but they still mattered in the overall story. And then when you consider the comic run that would follow, where Bebop and Rocksteady, our favorite Rhino and Warthog, unalived a turtle, did one in, guys, they belong in the conversation for the greatest that the Turtles has to offer. Number 5, we have a newer iteration of a Turtles villain in Tiger Claw. This assassin went from being Shredder's right hand to being a full-blown character with his own agency that ends up in kind of a blood feud with the Turtles and with April. And for as much as I appreciate some of the characters that highlight either the science side in the Triceratons or some of the more everyday aspects like the purple dragons, this is one example of that martial arts background, that ancient clan honor aspect that I think is really done very well. And I think given more time, Tiger Claw could end up higher on this list. And the only reason why he doesn't is just because the rest of this list has characters that are longer in the tooth. Pardon the pun. Number 4, y'all. I said it was going to happen. I said it was going to be controversial. So many of these lists, including the one that inspired me, assume that this character is number 1 and everybody else falls behind. At number 4, we have Shredder. Y'all, hold your pitchforks, hold your torches, hold the tomatoes, because we've got to talk about this. Y'all, I cannot deny how important Shredder is to the overall mythos of the Turtles. But when you take the entirety of Turtles into consideration, there are more impactful villains than Hirokusaki. And Shredder is more of a title than he is a character. And the reality is most of the time, Shredder is kind of like Lord Zed in Power Rangers. Y'all remember Lord Zed? He was a character that originally garnered backlash from parents because he scared kids. Because this character was so menacing and so evil in comparison to Rita Repulsa that he stood out and caused a lot of problems for kids. And so they had to turn him back. And he became kind of this bumbling buffoon that, yeah, had stakes, but ultimately was just the foil for the Power Rangers to defeat. Same thing with Shredder. Shredder has been done to varying degrees of efficacy, but at the end of the day, is just kind of a character that ultimately is going to fall to the Turtles and not really bear a long-standing impact. Sure, you can argue that Shredder has his roots in the very origin story of the Turtles, but again, when you take the full storytelling into consideration, I just don't think he belongs any higher than number 4. At number 3, we have a character that has a bit of a complicated history, depending on which iteration you're talking about. She has been everything from Shredder's daughter to granddaughter to Splinter's daughter. We have Karai. Now, before you guys have my head over this, think about this. Karai is no nonsense. Shredder likes to grandstand, likes to have the pomp and circumstance of it all. Karai is just like, you killed my father, you killed my grandfather, you dishonored my clan, you're dead, and is just in there to get the job done in a way that Shredder just isn't. And so this may be biased talking because of how much I enjoyed The Last Ronin, but regardless of iteration, I think anytime we see Karai in comparison to Shredder, Karai is more capable and just an overall menace to the Turtles. Number 2, we have everybody's favorite mad scientist, Baxter Stockman. Baxter Stockman plays to the science component of the Turtles. And y'all, the Turtles are mutants. They have their basis in, yes, martial arts and mysticism, but also in science. And that's where Baxter Stockman comes in. He is the creator of the Mousers. He is the creator of the mutagen that created the Turtles in a lot of different versions. And y'all, he is Superfly. And so he belongs on this list because even though he started off as wrong place, wrong time, affable scientist, he's grown into a very legitimate threat to the Turtles. Before we get to number one, we have to go through a couple of honorable mentions. Y'all, the first one is born out of nostalgia for me. We have Leatherhead, an alligator that was flushed down the toilet. Don't think about that too long, but found by Crang and turned into the mutant Leatherhead. Y'all, I loved what they did with Leatherhead in Mutant Mayhem. I think the changes that they made were phenomenal. But for me, my history with this character goes back to the arcade games. I grew up on the video games, y'all. And so Leatherhead is one that has a soft spot for me. And when you consider the different versions across the different shows, movies, comics, Leatherhead deserves an honorable mention. Next up, we have General Trag, the leader of the Rock Soldiers. He is just ridiculous. For me, he's important to expanding out from just the martial arts side. He plays to that different dimension mutant aspect of it and is just a fun character from the 80s cartoon. Rounding out our honorable mentions, we have one of the most enigmatic characters to grace the Turtles universe. We have the Rat King. Like his name suggests, he's a king of the rats. He has power over rats and lives in the sewers. Originally from Boston, makes his way to New York City and has been everything from a straight villain to an anti-hero. But either way, in any iteration, he brings a liveliness and a personality and a charisma to the screen or to the comic book that he at least deserves to be mentioned here. Number one on our list, we have Crang. It should come as no big surprise to anybody that the warlord of Dimension X is our number one. He is a mainstay and is so impactful to the overall storytelling of the Turtles that for me, this is my version where most people put Shredder. Most people put Shredder in front of Krang. I will never understand that. Krang is the warlord and easily the biggest threat to the Turtles. He's got the Technodrome, he's got the armies, he's got the power. He's number one on our list. All right, that's a wrap, y'all. Go ahead and chime in below. I want to hear from you guys. I want to know what you guys love about the different characters. And so I want your lists down in the comment section because remember, everybody's got their own lists. That's the beauty of loving a show like this. That's the beauty of loving the Turtles is everybody gets to have their own flavor. So chime in below. Make sure that if you're not, subscribe, tick that bell for notifications so that way you do not miss any uploads because we've got more Turtles goodness coming. Until next time, Cowabunga Shellheads.